Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Diverse Dividends, where we explore the many different paths to success in the Canadian finance industry. I'm Sara Loriot, your host, and today I'm beyond thrilled to be joined by a very special guest who not only has quite the career, but who's also my friend, Joanna Simon. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's as a listener of the show, I can't tell you what an honor it is to be sitting in this chair. So thank you very much for having me.
No, I'm thrilled to have you on board today. So Joanna is an accomplished leader at Scotiabank who works in the international wealth space. And if I had to describe Joanna in just a few words, I would say that one, she's quite the leader. She's a very authentic leader. Second, she's very adaptable. And third, I'd say that she's extremely ambitious. And today I'm so excited to really give Joanna a platform to share her story with you all.
Such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to get into it.
I'm so excited to get started. So I describe you as being adaptable, and knowing you, of course, I know that your career journey is nothing short of exceptional. But what's particular about it is that you've touched a few different departments and worked for a variety of firms, from international firms to startups to big firms and small firms, but you've also worked in both operations as well as the head of sales. And fast forward to today, you are now a regional director in international investment advisory at Scotiabank. So would you be able to share more about your journey and how it led you to where you are today?
Absolutely. I think the initial start for me in financial services was curiosity. My undergraduate degree is actually in cultural anthropology, so I really never envisioned myself working in financial services, but I had to do something. I needed a job, and banks are full of people. So initially, I was just curious about how all of these people get together and organize themselves to do work. So that got me in the door, and then I think following that, as I progressed in my career, the interest in international was about the complexity. And again, as someone curious about people in different cultures, I like the ability to learn and work with people from different places because I think that's just endlessly fascinating. But as I progressed in my career, it was about the complexity of figuring out not just how things operate domestically, but then adding on how do you serve clients and colleagues in different jurisdictions. So that's really been a through line for me throughout my career. And of course, drawn to people leadership as well. I tried for a very brief period to be a sole contributor, and I found it wasn't for me. I was bored, and I get such energy from working with people that I know I'm in the right place when I'm leading people and working and collaborating with others.
Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you so much. And would you be able to give us more insights on your role currently? So what does a regional director in the international investment advisory do?
Well, to some extent, I'm still figuring it out, to be honest with you, Sarah. I joined in this latest role, so I've been there for 3 months now, and it has been a whirlwind and, again, a ton of fun to be back in the international space. Earlier in my career, I had worked in international wealth management at a different firm, and it's a very LATAM group, which is, again, a lot of fun to work with the different cultures. My husband is from Latin America, so in a way, it feels like home. But my day-to-day is really about connecting with people, particularly in these early days where I'm doing a lot of listening and trying to understand what is getting in the way of people doing their best work, and equally what's working and what do we need to build on more. So I lead a team of about 40 advisors with my incredible branch manager, Beatrice Martin. And together we figure out, again, what's working and what do we need to tweak a little bit to unleash an even bigger business in future.
That's so interesting. And it really seems like you need to perhaps have a lot of ambition, which you have, be adaptable, but also be able to adapt and be entrepreneurial also, I imagine.
Absolutely. I think because in many of my roles, and again in this one, we're sitting on a domestic platform, right? Where we have the privilege of working inside a big respected Canadian firm, but our business is international. So it's sort of a theme for me throughout my career that, I'm using the tools that I have for things they weren't built for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of resilience required, and the ability to sort of think outside the box and try and figure out how to get the same goal compliantly and in a way that's in line with our risk appetite, but to serve a client where you're not using the platform that was necessarily built for you.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the flexibility and my experience in operations comes in very handy
Mm-hmm.
to understand what you need to do to make things work and what's potentially possible. But that's again been the really exciting part of this role and others I've had like it in the past. It's the figuring out that really excites me and gets me out of bed in the morning and doing great work with interesting people.
Oh, that's so wonderful. So you've mentioned the word people quite a few times. So I understand your interest in working with people, but I know you personally, and I know that you are an incredible leader. And having been a leader both in operations, as head of sales, and in your current role, would you be able to describe what your leadership style is like?
Absolutely, and thank you for saying, Sarah. I think, well, I'm a people first leader, right? I believe leadership is about elevating those around you. So, my approach to leading people is again to do a lot of listening, to build on and invest in the people that you get to work with, and also to foster the trust that fuels collaboration and high performance. So, I think maybe in contrast to some other leaders who are in the industry, I think as someone very focused on the culture and people of an organization, even favoring the people over necessarily emphasizing aggressive results. To be clear, I can set big targets and deliver on them, but it's about how you get there. It's perhaps very telling that my favorite quote in business is from Peter Drucker, who said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," right? Because you can have the best strategy in the world, but if people don't want to do it and you don't have the buy-in or people are not engaged, you're never going to get anything done. So again, I really focus on setting the right conditions for success. And for me, leadership again is about listening to your team, removing whatever barriers are in the way, and then making bold decisions to get where you want to go.
I love that. And I love the idea of culture because I think that that's something that's just very, very important in the workplace. So, at work, how do you instill a culture where your team feels comfortable taking risk, but in a way that they feel supported in trying new things, for example?
Well, again, culture is what a group of people repeatedly does and says, and their shared beliefs and the expectations of behavior. So, for me to try and instill a culture and foster the collaboration that we need to work again in this very complex cross border space, it's really important for me to, for starters, show up. So I am always in the office, and again, particularly because now I'm getting to know a new team, but I want people to see that I am there and really wanting people to come to me and tell me what's going on. So that's for starters, it's about leadership presence and making myself available to those around me. And then beyond that, I think in terms of fostering a culture where you can take risks, I do a fair bit of laughing at myself, and I think you need to make it okay and share when things maybe haven't worked out as you planned, or if a meeting doesn't go as maybe you had expected it to. I talk about that. Like I take that and try and digest it with my team so that they see me in a leadership position. I make mistakes, and it's not that I celebrate mistakes, but I don't hide them either, right? So I think you need to make it okay by showing people, by talking about your own trials and tribulations, and then that creates the space and sets the tone so that other people can take some risks and then talk about what they learned from as well.
Oh no, I just love that. I think this is music to my ears, only because I'm someone who has a lot of initiative, and sometimes my ideas are good, sometimes they're bad. But then when they're bad, I want to know that what remains is the experience, and that I'm supported in continuing to come up with ideas, right? Because if I come up with an idea that wasn't so good, and then I didn't feel supported in making a mistake, then it's not going to encourage me to continue to innovate and bring new ideas forth. So
That's so important, Sarah. And as someone who knows you, I know what ideas and ambition you're fueled by. And again, I think we need to understand and do a better job of recognizing that there's value in trying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Effort begets outcomes and it's refinement. And so even again in the projects or opportunities that didn't work out as you had planned, there's still value in that.
Mm-hmm.
There's immense learning. And I think as a leader over the years, I've learned how to learn, and that's valuable in and of itself, because it's not always about putting the wins up on the board.
Mm-hmm.
It's about all of the scrapes and bruises you've gotten along the way, because that builds something so important, which is your ability to be resilient,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as a leader, again, not everything you try is going to work out, and it's a challenging industry, challenging market, and you need to be able to pick yourself up and come back to work tomorrow. And particularly in a leadership position, it's not just about how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You need to inspire a team, right? So they need to see that even when things are really hard, you're still there and you're still trying. So I couldn't agree with you more.
I love that. So going back to your journey, so from anthropology to finance, would you be able to tell us about how your experience in the industry have helped develop your current leadership style?
Absolutely. I think again, as a people first leader, I've been shaped by the wonderful leaders I've had the privilege of working with, and also by the not so great ones. Right. I think I've learned equally from both. Again, something that stuck with me is an idea so captured beautifully by Maya Angelou, who said, to paraphrase, you might not remember what people ask of you, but you remember how they made you feel, right? So that's really stuck with me, because, I've seen what trust and collaboration and really believing in your staff, I've seen how that can deliver and foster great results. But I've seen how a lack of integrity and fear can derail a business just as quickly. So I really keep that in mind, particularly in challenging situations. Again, it's about how you show up and how you make things okay for the people you get to work with. And I think something really formative for me in my own career is that I got to see what good looks like really early on. I spent about 5 years in a complex little international business inside a much bigger firm. And again, because of the challenge of the work, and again, another theme, sort of doing an international thing in a big domestic business, it bred a really interesting collaborative environment, but it was underpinned by the most incredible culture and really strong female leadership. So again, getting to see that early in my career was really formative. And I think I've been trying to build on that and hone my own leadership skills ever since.
I love that. And I love how real you got on the topic, because the real life workplace is not a textbook workplace, in that sometimes you will come across leaders or managers that are not so good, but there's always something that can be learned from that. And so would you say that early on in your career you were always looking to get into leadership and management?
So I've always been drawn to leadership, and even before I started in financial services, I was the head lifeguard. So again, leadership is something I've always been drawn to, and I'm from a big family, so I played a leadership role at home as well. I think maybe what's changed for me over the years is that, like we're talking about, I've tried many different things. I've been in a startup and various different firms and a sole contributor. So I don't regret any of those experiences. Again, all those things got me here. But I think maybe the driving force for me was about 10 years ago when I was pitching yet another idea to a friend and mentor, and he stopped me in my tracks and he said, "Joanna, pick a lane." And the advice made me chuckle, but thinking back on it, he was absolutely right, because I had the ambition, but not necessarily the direction or the focus to understand where I should be going. And so I was really intentional about thinking about, what do I like to do? What gets me excited to get out of bed every day? And where can I add the most value? And so, when I spent some time figuring that out and then married that with my ambition, that's when the magic really kind of happened for me. And I had a clear direction and a path about what I wanted to do. And then I pursued it, and now here I am.
I just love that, because especially for our listeners who might be earlier in their career, I would say sometimes there's this notion that you just need to know where you want to get to, and people tend to think that in order to get to that point, you need to have been in that specific role, kind of start from the bottom, get promoted until you get to the end goal, where the reality is that you can take many different ways, many different paths to get to where you want, and you can also change your mind throughout your way there. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Nothing is forever,
yeah.
right? So you can try something and then and then you can always go back or take a different direction. So leadership and progressing throughout your career, it's not always about the ladder, right? It's not always about the next step. And sometimes maybe you take risks, or you make a decision that it's not apparent to everybody else what you're doing, but you take some different opportunities for the learning, for the challenge. And I think maybe sometimes it's hard for people who have taken a more traditional path, like you're talking about. I think it's rarer and rarer these days, but it is still possible to start somewhere and work your way up. I think sometimes people who have had the benefit of working for many years, decades even, in the same institution, I think sometimes until you have taken the big leap and joined a new firm, joined a startup, gone out on your own, you don't know you can do it until you do it. And again, even when it doesn't work out, there's still value in that. And the most important thing is knowing that you can come through the other side and pick yourself back up and try again, try something else.
No, I just love that. So a few moments ago, you mentioned your ambition, and I think that's definitely somewhere where you and I meet, ambition, and that you are. And so I'd love to drill more into the topic. And so you've been ambitious from a young age. As you mentioned, you were the head lifeguard, which I didn't know about. So I love having this interview with you because I didn't know that about you. And so can you tell me more about that side of you? And were there times where that ambition was perhaps misunderstood by people around you, or even underestimated?
Absolutely, Sarah. This is a great question because, I'm a friendly person, and I smile a lot, and I go out of my way to, again, try to set the conditions for people to thrive at work and do their best. And I think there have been times where what some people get wrong about me is they mistake that for weakness, or they think that that I might be manipulated, or that I'm just a nice person, which is sort of code for doormat, really. So, but what I can tell you is that they don't believe that for long, right? Because I am also a very driven and dedicated and ambitious individual, and I don't see any conflict between being, a kind, fun-loving person who enjoys her colleagues and being in the office, and also, delivering great results and doing great work. So for me, it's not either or, it's both and. But definitely there have been times in my career, and it still happens sometimes, where people get the wrong idea because I'm smiling and I'm genuinely optimistic, and that's what people get wrong. But it doesn't bother me at all, and I wouldn't change anything about what I'm doing to get a different outcome.
Yeah, I just absolutely love that you mentioned that, and it resonates with me so much. I hope it resonates with our listeners, because I'm smiley, I'm bubbly, and so many times was that mistaken for something that I wasn't. Because being ambitious also means being driven, having initiative, wanting to have an impact. So thank you so much for sharing that, because ultimately it's about being yourself, bringing your full self to work. And I would say that, again, knowing you personally, I know that you're a very authentic leader, and you do bring your full self to work. So can you tell me how you're able to do that?
I think first and foremost, I was really, really intentional about which firm I wanted to join and where I wanted to spend my time. And again, I'm newer in my role at Scotia, but when I was thinking about my next move, I was really, really very careful about looking at the values of the organization I was joining. And I'm sure you'd agree, Sarah, there's a concerning backlash in some parts of our industry against DE&I initiatives. And I'm very pleased to say that the commitment to DE&I is very firm at Scotiabank. So again, it was important to me to be in the right environment where I knew it was in line with my own values and the way I wanted to work. Beyond that, again, I try to show up in every situation, inside and outside of work, as a way, in a way, rather, that I can be proud of my behavior. And I often think to myself, particularly in challenging situations, because there's a lot of ambiguity and gray gray areas and challenging dynamics. But I try to think to myself, what behavior or what decision would I be proud of in 10 years time? And it's sort of like my future self talking to me now. And it's really helpful just as a really grounded framework for how to lead in challenging situations and make good decisions. And that's carried me through. And again, I laugh a lot at myself, and I try to let people know that I make mistakes, and I talk about them, and that helps me be as authentic as I possibly can in a professional setting.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, because I feel if I can share a bit of my own story, earlier in my career, I would say my first real job in asset management, I really felt like I had to blend in with the rest of the team. So really going back to basics, however they dressed, I had to dress. Whatever they had as a hobbies, I had to have as a hobby. For example, playing golf, which not my cup of tea, but somehow I found myself taking lessons, and how I dressed, how I talked, and everything. And then it was just impossible for me to really fit in, because I just didn't fit in, right? So fitting into that narrow box was just not for me, right? And I think that I did get a bit of backlash in not wanting to fit into the box. And that's when I realized, to your point, that being intentional about which firm you work for and who you work with as well is of utmost importance, and in order to really be able to bring your full self to work and really optimize how much you can contribute to that firm.
So Sarah, I'm laughing. What you're saying resonates so much, because I can remember, in my first years in financial services, like, I tried to like straighten my hair or wear suits, or just like have my hair back. And I'm really tall, but I tried to wear flats, and I was sort of like trying to make myself not stand out.
Yeah.
Right? Like I just wanted to sort of be like everyone else. And, part of that was I felt like I didn't belong there. So I was trying to be like what I thought a person in banking would look like. But you're absolutely right. It's such a relief, and it's so empowering to say, no, I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way, and come to work authentically, professionally, of course. But you don't need to be like everybody else. In fact, there's so much value, like the theme of the show, diverse dividends. It's about the differences that we all bring to work. And again, my interest in cross-cultural understanding and fostering an environment where all of our different ideas can come together and build something better. That's really what it's all about. But I remember very well the days of like trying to dress in a certain way, and now I'm just up with all of that.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think it's probably a sign of the era that we're in, where it's also more accepted to be yourself. But I just love what you said about being intentional, because again, if you can't be yourself at work, I don't think that you can contribute as much as you can. So for example, you have a background in anthropology, you're interested in people, and you were the leader in your household with, I know you have a few siblings.
That's right.
And so that doesn't go out the door when you come into work in finance. And so how can you even bring those pieces of you and help make the firm better?
That's absolutely right. It's about bringing all of that with you, and sharing your experience with everyone else. But Sarah, when you said we're in a new era now, I agree with you. Things are changing, but I think it's changing because of us, because of what we're doing and our presence and our refusal to, maybe do things the way they've always been done, or blend in. It's I think we're creating that change, and it's a really powerful and exciting time.
I mean, I love your leadership style, and again, as compared to maybe what you might see on TV, or what you think of a typical leader in finance, I think that having you as a leader in our industry is so refreshing, so refreshing. So now I'd like to move on to a topic that's not talked about so much, and that is the recognition that perhaps you've outgrown a role, and determining when it's time to move on. So really discussing a framework for knowing when it's time to look for other employment or other opportunities. And the reason why I say that that's something that's not talked about as much is perhaps because it's taboo, I'm not sure. But what I know for sure is that in previous generations, so thinking about our parents or perhaps a generation before them, it was very typical that one would stay at their job for for their whole career, right?
Mhm.
But that is so not true of our generation, right? But again, people don't really talk about having a framework for knowing when it's time to find other opportunities, whether it's because you've outgrown your role or for other reasons. And knowing that, for example, you worked at a startup, you worked in operations, and now you're regional director in international wealth at Scotia. Could you share some pieces of advice?
Sure, and I think I agree with you. It's a really interesting topic that doesn't necessarily get a lot of attention. But I'll start by saying that I'm so eternally grateful for all of the various opportunities that I've been fortunate enough to have over my career, and it was always a function of my own interest and ambition, but coupled with someone who believed that I could do the job, even when making some leaps like going from operations to sales or taking
Mm-hmm.
on bigger teams. I had the benefit of somebody seeing in me things that I thought I could do, but and
Mm-hmm.
had the opportunity as well. So when I'm in the role, the way I start thinking about when maybe it's possible to start thinking about next steps, again, in any leadership role I've ever had, I'm not coming from the population of the people that I lead. So I need to come into the situation with genuine humility and
Mm-hmm.
curiosity about understanding what is the day-to-day of the people I get to work with, what's getting in their way, what's working really well. And then that allows us as a group to figure out what do we want to change and where are we going. And then we set really big targets. And once I see that we're on the way, there's a path, we have a plan. And even more importantly, when I can assess and see that the leaders around me are ready to move forward and take on the mission without my day-to-day involvement, I think that's actually the most exciting and fulfilling part of leadership, because it's not just about when I myself feel I'm ready for something else. It's about fostering the leadership talent around you and celebrating when you've made space for somebody else to come in behind you and build and do an even better job
Mm-hmm.
as you create space for others. So again, I think about when there's a clear path and when I see others around me able to take on the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the other thing I'll say is that I never really leave a team, right? Like I'm always invested in those that I've been lucky enough to work with. So it's still fun. I still check in on the colleagues and people that I've gotten to meet years and years ago, and I'm still really excited about everyone's
Mm-hmm.
success. So that's sort of how I think about what you add to a project and when you're willing and able to move on.
No, thank you so much for sharing, because again, it's something that happens on the daily that people don't really talk about. So I appreciate you sharing that, and also in the hopes that it inspires those who might be considering even a career change, right? Whether it's into finance or outside of finance or within our big industry, moves to a different side of the industry, because sometimes making moves might feel scary. Why? Because you've never been exposed to it, and one might think, well, I was aiming to be in that role at this stage of my career, only
Yeah.
to realize that
Yeah.
maybe that's not what you want, but it's scary to think that you may need to start all over again somewhere else. But I like to think that with the age expectancy now, if
That's
we wanted
right.
to, we could have two completely different careers.
We're going to be working for a
We're
long
going to
time,
be working
Sarah.
for a long
That's
time.
right. And that's the good thing is that we like what we do. So that'll keep
Yeah.
us going. But you're absolutely right. And in all seriousness, the exciting thing about going outside of your comfort zone is that your comfort zone gets bigger,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you build your resilience and you realize that like, yeah, you can take a risk, and then you like there'll always be big financial services firms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So leaving, I think, when I left my first major financial institution and joined a startup, there was a bit of trepidation, like, oh, maybe they'll never let me back. And of course, that wasn't the case at all, right? Careers are long, and I picked up really neat skills, and that was recognized when I was going back into wealth management. So I completely agree with you. I encourage people to, evaluate your risks, of course, but take a leap. Don't wonder about could you have done it. Do it and see what happens. I think that's a really sort of interesting way to look at career decisions and next steps.
Yeah, and I've even met very accomplished leaders who themselves had a career break, where they just needed a break.
Yeah.
They took some time for themselves, and then they came back roaring in the industry, and now they're very senior, very accomplished, uh, recognized leaders. And so everyone has their own journeys, and yeah, changing careers or industries, taking a break does not
No, not at
Yeah,
all. I
that's
had
not. Yeah.
a really exciting opportunity, first time and maybe the last time in my career, but in between my last role and my new role in Scotia, I got to take a period of time off, and it was without an infant, right? Because the only other time that I'd been away from work was when I was on maternity leave, and that's definitely not a break. But I got to take the summer off, and I traveled with my husband and our two kids, and it was just such a glorious, special time. And the really neat thing was I was aware of what a wonderful gift this was. And so I enjoyed every minute. And but I was so energized when I was thinking about next steps and coming back to work. So I completely agree. You can take pauses, you can do something else, you can come back. It's all valuable experience. And I think as long as you have the right outlook and again, assess things carefully, I think it all works out in the end.
That's great. So now taking a look at, or taking a step back, looking at the big picture of what your career is, was there ever a, a turning point that made you take the direction that you're in right now?
So again, I think the really pivotal point for me, the launch pad for sort of the leadership roles I've taken on since was again when I left my first big financial firm and I joined a startup. And again, it was I was excited about it. It was a big opportunity. It was completely different from anything that I'd ever done. But after a year, when it became clear that I wasn't going to work there forever, the firm wasn't going to launch it as we had anticipated. It was really pivotal for me because, again, it sort of shed light on what do I like to do, what gets me excited, and what do I need to do to advance in my career. So I enrolled in an MBA, which was a ton of fun, but it was in recognition of the fact that I knew as an anthropologist, I needed to enrich my business acumen. So that for me was more about proving it to myself than anyone else, really, because I just felt like I had more justification and I was able to sit at the table and not feel like the odd person out. But I was also really, really quite intentional about the conditions for my own success. So I knew I didn't like working from home, and I don't like working in like me in an Excel sheet all day long is terrible, right? It fills me with dread. So I knew I wanted to be a people leader, and I'm energized by people. And again, that was what might look like a blip in my resume was actually a really important turning point where I learned so much about myself and what I wanted to do, and I've been going ever since.
Oh, I love that. So you bring so much wisdom to the table. I have to ask, did you have any mentors along the way, or sponsors, or people you look up to in general that help you achieve this level of wisdom?
That's again very sweet of you to say, Sarah, but I have been the beneficiary of an incredible, talented group of individuals. And rather than point to one mentor specifically, I think I sort of have an advisory board.
I love that.
Wonderful wise individuals who I've collected over the years. And again, I'm really, really focused. When I talk about my network, it's not about just reaching out to someone when you need something from them, right? It's about, genuinely wanting to connect with people and staying in touch and understanding what's going on in their lives. And that affords me the great privilege of being able to call someone up and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. And the nice thing is if you call a bunch of people, when I summon my advisory board to ask them all about something I'm thinking about, I can pick out what the common threads are, or I can just pick the answer that I like the best. But that's been really helpful to me because, again, seeing what good leadership looks like and having a model and different perspectives when I'm, again, it's a challenging industry. And there are, to this day, situations that come across my desk that I'm not sure of how to handle. It's always nice to be able to pick up the phone and ask somebody else, what would you do?
An advisory board. I will.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I will make a mental note of that because I definitely do not have one. I have my husband who will lend me an ear every night if I wish. But no, I love that because I love asking the question about the support system because I always get different answers. One that comes across very often is the one of having a mentor, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that not everyone has the opportunity of having a mentor. myself included. And so where do you get those insights, right? And I know ChatGPT is great, but it is AI, it is just a computer. So and so, from my standpoint, it's about having those interviews where I get to selfishly ask all the questions that I think will not only benefit our viewers, but will also benefit me somehow. So I really view every guest on Diverse Dividends as my guide.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and I learned too through your show and the questions that you ask. So I think it's beneficial for all of us.
Oh, that's wonderful. So that wraps up all the questions that I had for you, except that on Diverse Dividends, we have a tradition that is where I ask each of our guests the same 3 rapid fire questions, or as I like to call them, the dividend questions, because of course our listeners who are tuning in are here to reap some dividends from the conversation. So view this as the cherry on top of the sundae. Are you ready?
I'll try to live up to that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. So number 1, what do you love about what you do?
People. Absolutely. It's all about people. Not only the colleagues that I'm fortunate enough to get to work with, but of course, wealth management is about clients, right? It's about their even in complex structures, there's always a person at the end, right? So I have the immense privilege of getting to learn about people and their stories and their journeys. And that, again, along with the wonderful colleagues that I get to work with every day, that's where I get my energy from. And it feeds my curiosity and my anthropological interest in different cultures. So that's it's all about people for me, Sarah.
I love it. Number 2, what is one thing that you've recently changed your mind on?
This is a tricky one to answer, Sarah, because it's hard for me to think about how I used to think before I think now, but I'm aware that my mindset has shifted on some things. So I'm going to try and answer your question. I think one of the interesting paradoxes of leadership is that the better you are at something, the more you rely on it. But this over-reliance can actually be a risk to scaling your leadership. What do I mean by that? If you want to take on a team that's 10 times the size of the one you lead now, you can't do 10 times the work, right? There are not enough hours in a day. And of course, we all want to maintain our energy and be able to go home to our loved ones and other activities. So, this became really clear for me a few years ago when I had been recruited for a big executive role, which by the way, I didn't get. But in the process of the recruitment, I was assessed by someone who asked me this very question. He said, "Okay, Joanna, you're lead a team of X now. You're interested in this role that is 10X your current job. How are you thinking about scaling your leadership?" And I gave some kind of answer about like, well, I'm going to do what I'm really good at, and I'm going to coach people, and my leadership will trickle throughout the organization. But it actually stopped me in my tracks because I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. And it is the most rational thing in the world to think that if you're good at something, you should do more of it. But those are actually the behaviors that will keep you stuck in your job, right? So the things that I was rewarded for and recognized for earlier in my career, doing everything myself, getting my hands dirty, jumping in, fixing it myself, that's how I learned. But that you can't scale that, right? So I had to shift my leadership and my thinking to creating capacity in others. And when I'm delivering a message, how do I know and what do I need to instill in people so that that message is delivered even when I'm not in the room? So that's where my thinking has changed recently, and I'm sure it will continue to develop over time. And what I can tell you now is that no leader escapes this paradox. So it's something worth thinking about more.
I love it, because I bet that must have been a good learning experience and must have even elevated your leadership.
You'll laugh, Sarah. So then I went back to the recruiter who didn't give me the job, and now he's my coach. So I realized that I had some gaps that I needed to fill in, and yeah, it was really, really actually a very important experience for me.
And I just want to add that I want to thank you for giving a real life example of that, because sometimes you hear about here's how we should be in leadership, and they're very elusive examples, right? And getting a real life example from you, in practice, what happened and how that made you a better leader is incredibly valuable. So I love that. And then third question, what is one piece of advice that you have to our listeners who are looking to grow in their career?
That's another good one, Sarah, because, as I think back over my career and when I ask this of senior leaders that I met along the way, I think that the most common advice that I got was take risks. Don't be afraid to take
Mhm.
risks, which we've been talking about along in our discussion today. But the missing piece for me was, what risks do you take and what do you do if it doesn't work out, right?
Mhm.
Again, it's sort of different if you're sitting in a role where you've worked for the same organization for a number of decades to tell someone early in their career to take a risk but not tell them how to do so. um, you're at risk of maybe setting them up for a disappointment. So what I know now as a leader sitting where I am today is that when you're thinking about a new challenge, or really it's about placing bets, right? And what you want to do is be really comfortable and really clear what and who are you betting on. And again, grounding your decision making in your principles and your values. I've taken some really big bets in my career, and I'm the sole breadwinner for my family, and I have an amazingly supportive husband. But some of those risks were scary because
Mhm.
I didn't know how it was going to work out. But what I knew and what got me through was that I was making decisions in line with my principles, and
Mm.
that allowed me to say, no matter the consequence, I know I'm proud of all the bets that I've taken, and it's gotten me to this place.
Oh, what a nice way to close it off. Absolutely love that. Joanna, thank you so, so much for lending us your time, for sharing your incredible story, for being vulnerable, and for most of all, being real. So thank you very much. And so, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did.